Aviv, whenever you're ready to start.
Hello, my name is Aviv, and my IA presentation is about one of the greatest themes going on throughout the Scarlet Letter, and that is civilization versus wilderness. My title for my IA is Civilization is Less Than Pearl, which is less than or equal to wilderness. Now the reason I did this is throughout the book you could tell that Pearl is not really a civilized child. She's more of a wild child. Also because she's a sin. She is a sin child. My thesis is Pearl throughout the Scarlet Letter is symbolized for wilderness. To start out, I'll give you some background about the Scarlet Letter. I know we haven't been talking about it in a while, so it's good to have some knowledge. Pearl begins as a symbol of sin. She is brought by a presumable passionate affair, which is also known as adultery. Adultery is when a married or non-married person has an affair with another married person. Now, this A that goes on throughout this book is the biggest theme, obviously, because it's very much out there. And he's not shy about it. He puts it out there. The author knows what he wants to say. And during this time, it wasn't predictable because such sin, during this time, during the Puritan age, was not called for, and a lot of people would never do it.
Good job.
Puritan background. They basically started in the 1620s. It ended right around the 1720s. They were very much hypocrites. They said that a sin is very bad, yet the way they reacted to one and the way they looked on others was basically a sin as well. They acted, they were so mean, they were so... The gesture that they had coming to another person with a sin was just uncalled for and not necessary. Now, there were very harsh punishments, like I said. In the adultery, a lot of the women said that she should just be disclosed from society. It was very harsh, it was unnecessary. What is a pearl? Now, pearl has a very unique name. A pearl is an impurity that gets inside of an oyster shell. Now, this is very important. This impurity is pearl. This is something during the Puritan age that would never happen. So this very rare case, just like when a pearl pops out, is pearl. Now, in Puritanism as well, you can't, and this time was like, you would have never had such thing. It wasn't something that people expected. That's why people had such a awe reaction to it. But on one side of the portal, and rooted almost at the threshold, was a wild rosebush, covered in this month of June with its delicate gems, which might be imagined to offer their fragrance and fragile beauty to the prison as he went on in, and to the condemned criminal as he came forth to this doom, in the token that the deep heart of nature could pity and be kind of him. Now, this is talking about the rosebush, the one and only, in the beginning of the story, one of the biggest symbolizations that is going on. Now, if I explain this rosebush, it was living in its own free will. In the surrounding of a gray and gloomy society, this was the one thing that was popping out. Now, if I explain that with Pearl's name instead, it would sound like I'm describing her. If I said the same thing that I said about the rosebush, that Pearl lived with her own free will, in the society of a gray and gloomy surrounding, she was the one popping out. It sounds like I'm describing Pearl, but in this situation, it was actually talking about a rosebush. Differences. Now, when you think about civilization, what comes to mind? How do you expect civilization to actually go about? Personally, when I think about civilization, I look at my friends, I look at myself. How do I act? That's the first thing that comes to mind, because that is what we call civilization. We call our personalities, our way of going through life is normal. And that's how we look at it. But when we think about wilderness, what is it? How do we know an exact definition? Wilderness does not have a set definition of it, because no matter how long you were in the wild areas, you still couldn't give it a definition, because you don't know if that's only what happened during that time that you were there. So it's very unpredictable. You really don't know whether the weather would stay the same, whether the reactions, all the surrounding, the sounds, you just can't predict. It straggled onward into the mystery of the primeval forest. This hemmed it on so narrowly, and stood so black and dense on either side, and imposed such imperfect glimpses of the sky above, that to Hester's mind it imagined not amiss the moral wilderness in which she had so long been wandering. Now, this is basically a slap to the face by the author saying, the woods are wilderness. This is where everyone opens up, everyone feels free, everyone could be themselves. Now, in the situation when it's the second half of the book, you have Dimmesdale, Hester, and Pearl in the woods. And that's when everyone opens up. That's when everyone is themselves, shows their love, and that's this part. Because it shows how it could be happiness, yet fear, which is what you see by Pearl. It's very unpredictable, because the wilderness, like I said, we don't know where exactly it may be. Wilderness-like personalities. Now, like I said, Pearl is a symbol to wilderness, because she is very unpredictable. The wild is unpredictable. And throughout the book, towards the end, you see the brook that she is scared of. Now, Pearl at times is very open. She's very talkative. But then at other times, she could be very scared, feared, crying, screaming. And while she's playing with that brook, when her mother took off the A, she's very scared. She feels like that line is the line of comfort. She would not feel comfortable because she doesn't really know her mother without that A on her chest. And that is one of the biggest moments that you see how unpredictable she is, because you wouldn't expect her, because she is so close to her mother. But then at this time, her personality changes so much, so you don't understand what is really going on. Pearl resembles the brook, inasmuch as the current of her life gushed from a wilderness as mysterious, and had flown through scenes shadowed as heavily with gloom. But unlikely this little stream, she dances and sparkled and prattled airily along her course. Now, is Pearl symbolizing nature in this situation? Throughout the whole book, there's little comments like airily along her course, moving, flowing. Is she in nature? Is she a part of nature? That's what I asked myself as soon as I saw that. Because she seems like, at times, like she's not a real character. Because of all the comments and all the weird ways he explains her. Now, obviously she is, because of all the big impact that she puts onto the novel. But at the same time, the way he expresses her seems like he's explaining nature at the same time, because nature is flowing. Embodiment of the Scarlet Letter. What does the embodiment have to do with wilderness? Now, when we see the embodiment of the Scarlet Letter, the big A, how does this change anything? But during the Puritan times, again, you wouldn't expect such thing. But the way they react to it, the way they act upon the A, with such pride, unlike no one else, when everyone looked down upon them in the beginning. And then they totally changed the way they look at it, dressing Pearl in such nice colors, bold colors. That is a way of pride, show pride that this Pearl, this rare thing that happened, is something that will not bring her down, not bring Hester down, yet pick her up and show her that there is something, there is a bright side to this sadness that went on. And when you think about wilderness, wild is the first thing that comes up. And this was such a wild thing to do, this was such a rare thing to do, that we question ourselves, like, how did she go through life not being sad about it and being so proud about it? And that's one of the biggest parts of the book that he really stresses. Now, towards the end of the book, at the end of the book, actually, there is the kiss that Dimmesdale asked for. Right on right while they're on the last part, she he asks her for a kiss. He is feeling weak. His inside is not as strong as usual. He doesn't really understand what to do. Now, when he asked her for a kiss, as soon as he gave her that kiss, there's a line that says that she became free all of a sudden. Now, does this mean that she is turning into a civilized person? Or what is going on? Is this a new phase in life for Pearl? Pearl kissed his lips. A spell was broken. The great scene of grief in which the wild infant bore a part had developed all her sympathies, and as her tears fell upon her father's cheek, they were the pledge that she would grow up amid human joy and sorrow, not forever do battle with the world, but be a woman in it. Towards her mother, too, Pearl errands as a messenger of anguish was all fulfilled. And this is exactly proving that throughout the novel, whether it was said or not, whether it was stated or not, she was truly a wild child, a child of wilderness, and not a civilized child. And this kiss truly changed her into a civilized child, because she felt like she finally had a father, finally had someone to look up for, even though he passed away right after that because of his weakness. In fine, the gossips of that day believed, and Mr. Xavier Pugh, who made investigations a century later, believed in one of his recent successors in office. Moreover, Faithful believes that Pearl was not only alive, but married and happy and mindful of her mother, and that she would most joyful have entertained that sad and lonely mother at her fireside. Now this is basically stating that though her father is gone, after knowing and acknowledging the fact that she truly has a father, she would do absolutely everything to stay by her side and make her mother as proud as possible and as happy as possible. Conclusion. She is finally civilized at the end of the book. This kiss does change it. And the big A obviously represents adultery. Thank you.